Ready to go? You ready to go?
I don't know if you heard me. You're all set. Go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Good evening. I'd like to call the February 6, 2025 Town Council meeting to order. Madam Clerk, could we have roll call, please?
Councilors: Bloom,
Here.
Burdick,
Present.
Clark,
Here.
Crow,
Here.
Levesque,
Here.
Ludke,
Here.
Mendez, Neary, Penn, Schnepp,
Yes.
Starr,
Here.
Turkelson.
Here.
Here.
You have 11.
Thank you. Okay, next item is going to be the Pledge of Allegiance. If you could remain seated till our veteran has been introduced. And tonight we have the pleasure of welcoming Assistant Town Manager Andrew Clyburn. And Betty, do you have some?
Yeah, I think Andy is going to speak for himself tonight. It's a real pleasure to have Andy Clyburn. He is our Assistant Town Manager and Coast Guard veteran. He's going to say a little bit about himself, and then he'll lead us. Thank you, Andy.
Absolutely. Good evening, Town Councilors. Andy Clyburn, I'm your Assistant Town Manager. Most of you probably know, prior to coming to work for the Town of Barnstable, I served a little over 29 years in the Coast Guard, all over the country. My final tour was here on Cape Cod, and that's where I have chosen to remain, and I'm happy to be your Assistant Town Manager. So with that, if I could get everyone to please stand, face the colors. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you.
Thank you. If you would remain standing for a moment of silence. Thank you. It's now my great pleasure to ask Dan Santos and Lawrence Rennie to come to the front. As many of you may know, well, Dan will get into the particulars, but Lawrence is an employee out at the transfer station, and they had an incident out there, and Dan will explain it all.
Good evening, everyone. Dan Santos, Director of Public Works. And welcome. So, Town of Barnstable Town Council, with grateful appreciation to Lawrence Rennie. Rennie. Thank you. On January 29th, 2025, a patron of the Barnstable transfer station was struck by a car and sustained severe injuries to her legs. Lawrence Rennie, an employee of the transfer station, was working nearby and immediately came to the woman's aid. Mr. Rennie utilized training he had only recently received in the treatment of severe bleeding. Calmly and with a clear head, applied a tourniquet to staunch the bleeding, possibly saving the woman's life. After applying first aid, Mr. Rennie remained with the woman, keeping her calm until emergency response personnel arrived. Mr. Rennie's actions on that day reflect great credit on himself and highlight the dedication and professionalism of the public servants employed by the Town of Barnstable. On behalf of the Barnstable Town Council and the residents of the town, I present you with this certificate of appreciation as a thanks for going above and beyond the call of duty in responding to this traumatic event. Signed, Craig Tamish, President, Barnstable Town Council.
You know, I think it's absolutely fantastic, and I think it's fantastic that the town has provided this training to our employees, and thank you for the Hyannis Fire Department, who has gone around and met with many of the different groups of employees to provide the training. So thank you to all, and fantastic job.
Would the family like to join? All of us? Come on.
Hey, guys, how are you? Did a great job, didn't he? Just right in front of me, buddy, here, right here. Oh, Grandma, come on up.
Gotta have Nana.
Okay, we will move on to our public comment. Before we do public comment, I just wanted to let people know that several letters have been received from Bruce Cole, Kate Gulliver, April Croker, and Shannon Mahoney regarding public comment. As I normally say, any emails that we receive are distributed to all of the counselors. So if you're not able to make it here in person for public comment, you're welcome to submit them via council@town.barnstable.ma.us. In accordance with Mass General Law, I should have said this in the beginning, in accordance with Mass General Law 30A, Section 20, I must inquire whether anyone is recording this meeting, and if so, to make your presence known. Seeing no one, this meeting is televised live via Xfinity Channel 8 or 1070, or is on high definition channel 1072, or may be accessed via the Government Access Channel live stream feed. For public comment, please make sure you sign in with your name and village and identify yourself when you start speaking. Public comment is 3 minutes. Please keep your comments brief and to the point. Anyone for public comment? Mr. Julius.
Can you hear me okay?
Yep.
So, thank you very much, Mr. President. And, you know, I don't pride myself in coming down here to rattle the cage. Sometimes some of my friends say, "Why, you rattle the cage?" I don't pride myself in that. But I've been coming here now for more than probably 25 years. And I always like to say I come in here to try to help people, and especially the taxpayers. And what I can tell you is somebody this week did a Freedom of Information Act, and it wasn't me. You all know my stance on all the overbuilding right now going on in our town. I've told you time and again, we can't handle it. The water can't handle it. The water, wastewater, we can't handle it. The narrative, if you will, on this affordable housing, that's all I ever hear about. You hear about it on the radio. You hear about it you read about it in the newspaper, in the local paper here. The Freedom of Information Act, somebody did they didn't actually do it for me. They gave me this. This right here in my hand, and when I'm done, I'm going to pass it on. I didn't have the ability to make 13 copies. It's an 8-page report from the Barnstable Police Station obtained within the last 7 days. And it's got all of the activity that's gone on in the greenery. That's 120 units of affordable housing. This, ladies and gentlemen, is 8 pages. It goes a little bit into 2025, but 2024. That's a Barnstable Village address. So the Barnstable taxpayers are at the mercy of having to pay for this, as far as I'm concerned, lunacy. You know something else? There's the elephant in the room. Everybody's afraid to say, well, not in my backyard. People are afraid to say that. I'll be the first one to tell you no. When I see this, I would never want affordable housing in my backyard if this is what we get. We all deserve better than this. 8 pages of 120 units of affordable housing. I feel bad for the Barnstable taxpayers and Barnstable Village, but you know something? We all pay for the police that goes out there. They just share in the fire station costs. And when I get time, I'll go and see how many times the fire department's out there. Mr. President, you were a dedicated police officer in this town for a long time. You could probably tell people better than most how much an average cost is. Well, this is 8 pages worth, and to me, this is a disgrace. And maybe we need to pause and go try to figure out, is this what affordable housing gets for all of us? Because if it is, I don't want it, and I don't want it in the first place because I've told you, we can't handle it. The water can't handle it. The wastewater can't handle it. So with that, I'll conclude by, as I always try to do, to thank you for the time you put in. But going forward, I hope you'll have the guts to say no. I told you last time, I'll keep coming here to say it. Maura Healy has nothing to do with running our town, and she shouldn't be the one to tell us. Thank you. She shouldn't be the one to tell us how to run the town. We tell you, and you're our local leaders, and you're the ones. So please, just have some guts in going into the future. Start to say no. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eric Schwab, Hyannis. I too got a package in the mail, 6 pages of police reports to 77 Winter, 6 pages, mostly medical emergencies. So I went up to the fire department, and they also have 180 reports. So this is 240 reports. The fire department, Hyannis Fire, which we pay for, has 180, so over 400 calls for assistance to the shelter. So that's a burden on the taxpayers, particularly Hyannis. And I think if we're going to move that shelter anywhere, we need to consider these 400 calls and what that costs and who's going to pay for it. I've spoken previously about the need for a pilot program, payment in lieu of taxes. This is a very good place to start. You know, at the minimum, HAC could start paying some fire taxes. You know, if they want to kick in on police, that's up to the president, obviously. But I don't know what a call costs. I mean, if a police car and an ambulance show up, that has to cost $1,200. And if it costs $1,200 to have 2 emergency vehicles, that's $250,000 a year that the taxpayers are paying for a nonprofit that pays their executives 6-figure salaries. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Is there any further public comment? Ms. Poyan, any public comment on Zoom? Mr. Hanson.
Good evening, town councilors. I'm Peter Hanson, Barnstable resident, Calm Water Commissioner, and President of the Barnstable Village Association. I would like to briefly share a few comments on the town of Barnstable's LCP agenda and housing production plan. The members of the Barnstable Village Association have for many years expressed their desire to have Barnstable remain the quaint village that it is known for and for what makes it special. Through multiple surveys, meetings, and letters to the town, it has always been expressed and confirmed that we do not want changes made to the existing zoning and density regulations. It should be up to the individual villages to determine their own vision on what the future should look like and then be able to steer in that direction to accomplish their goals. That being said, we found out recently that the town wants to adopt a community approach to planning and housing that mimics the guidelines set by the Cape Cod Commission. This would apply a blanket approach to housing that would strip the villages of their own input. This is very serious and concerning because it is totally opposite of what has been expressed, the expressed views of the citizens. How does this happen? Why does all the data that is opposed to this approach get overlooked or ignored? And why is there a rush to get this done? There should not be a top-down approach to the housing production plan. The ad hoc housing subcommittee is coming up with 3 to 4 proposals that they believe will have community support. They're coming out with a report in March. We urge the town council to table any votes regarding the proposed housing production plan until there is time for more public comments and transparency. You owe that to the citizens of Barnstable. Thank you for letting me speak.
Thank you.
Hello, councilors. My name is Cliff Carroll, West Barnstable resident and a lifelong Barnstable resident. Before I give my comments, and I'm not talking about wind tonight, I'd like to preface it with, I was on the board of directors of Housing Assistance Corp. for 8 years. I actually was part of the finance committee, and I was on the actual board for just a little less than 8 years. I resigned maybe about a year and a half ago, roughly, and I just want to preface my comments on that. And again, I'm going to make this very quick. In front of you, you have a packet, each and every one of you. The top letter is a letter from the Barnstable Water Commissioner, and the second letter is a little screenshot from a study that was done about water. I'm not a not in my backyard person, but I'm quickly becoming a not in my well field or well area or water area person. This letter, again, very quickly, I'm going to just cut right to the chase of it. This is from the Water Commissioner of the Barnstable Water Company. It was done on December 3rd, about a month ago. This was in reference to the Wilkins 2 housing complex that's coming in behind BJ's. The Water Commissioner in this stated, "We are dangerously close to exceeding our Water Management Act permit and are deeply concerned about additional construction within the Barnstable Fire District." The reason of saying that is they supply the water for Independence Park and all those apartments behind BJ's, and it's all the same well fields that supply the water for Comaquid, Barnstable Village, and all that. The housing production plan, I've looked at it very quickly, but it really needs more review. I feel that it mirrors the proposal that was put to us by the Cape Cod Commission, who wanted to take over regional housing planning, and there was a very well-written letter about a year ago on February 15th, and that was by Felicia Penn, who was president of town council at that time. And she wrote a letter adamantly on behalf of the town council, rejecting Cape Cod Commission wanting to take over the ability to state what our little villages and towns and the town of Barnstable is going to have a say in as far as zoning and housing. In it, it says, elected and appointed officials at the local government level are best suited to listen to and understand the needs and desires of the communities they represent and serve. These positions and the plans and policies that reflect them should continue to control regional designations and land use policies, which may inform local decision-making. And then at the end of that sentence, but should not drive it or supersede it. So it's basically a rejection of Cape Cod Commission wanting to take over our zoning. In addition to that, the second letter, or the second part of the package that I gave you.
Mr. Carroll, can you wrap it up, please?
Thank you. Sorry about that. Instantly. This is a copy of a study that was done by a town of Barnstable about 10 years ago. It was in reference to what would happen if we lost any of our wells. And it said that that time that they decided that the Hyannis water system has a deficit, or projected deficit, of 1.87 million gallons per day in 2020. That was if we lost wells. We have already endangered the wells in the Mar well field with the transformer substations. I believe water is an issue that's been completely overlooked by the housing plan, and I believe that we should delay the final signing of this until it's properly publicly vetted. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any further public comment? Lynn?
There is no one on Zoom.
Okay. Thank you. I'm going to close public comment. Just for clarification for the record, I failed to announce that Councilors Penn, Starr, and Schnepp are here via Zoom. All right. Okay. Excuse me? Oh, okay. Councilor Neary is here. The clerk noted his arrival. Council response to public comment. Do we have any? Councilor Ledke.
Yes, thank you. I appreciate we've gotten several letters, and sort of our speakers here tonight have touched on the housing production plan. We have it before us as a first read, so there won't be discussion of that tonight. And if you read the justification in there, it says it doesn't have to even have two reads. And I'm glad it is having two reads. To make sure I hadn't missed anything, I read it from front to back again yesterday, and I sadly think it's not ready for publication. I don't think it's ready to be sent on to the state for approval, and I think it needs more than amendments to do that. But I look forward to a very healthy discussion where we can all point out what we think would make this document ready to do that. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment on my right? Any further comment on my left? Councilor Crowe?
Thank you, Mr. President. I also would like to comment on the HPP. First, I'd like to point out that I am a member of the Ad Hoc Committee for Housing and a liaison to the actual Housing Committee here in Barnstable. I spent a lot of time reviewing this housing production plan, both on its processes and substance. The housing production plan suffers from a fundamental lack of actual public engagement and numerous process infirmities. Many of its recommendations are directly in contradiction to recorded public sentiment. I think we need to do a better job for all our residents and move forward housing solutions that have a demonstrated community support. I will save detailed comments for another day, but thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Any comment from our councilors on Zoom? Seeing none? Okay. Yeah, we'll be closing public comment. I don't think we need a motion, do we? No. Town manager communications. As a reminder, the town manager publishes both a written and a video version of his report to the town council. The video is shown prior to the start of the town council at approximately 6:30, I believe, right, Ms. Boyant? 6:30. In this week's update, he talks about the continuing preparation of the capital and operating budget for FY26, the comments that were made to the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs regarding the Public Lands Preservation Act, and the continuation, we're going to be signing a letter of support and to continue the project with MIT Renewable Energy Facilities Siting Clinic that worked with various stakeholders over the wind to see what they could do to both find out what concerns were and to keep the process going if that was our choice. Again, town residents have multiple ways of communicating with the town, both via the app, via email, and there's a new video that's out starring Mr. Ells, is it? No? Starring Ms. Boyant. Who are we starring?
Lynn Poyant, Director of Communications. It's just a communications video that is
narrated by Kathy Flynn, our digital content manager, but it's purely informational, so it's providing email addresses, telephone numbers on the screen.
Okay, thank you. And finally, Jim Kupfer discusses the local comprehensive plan update and the Great Streets. So that is available online. Okay, minutes. We had an opportunity to review the minutes, and do I have a motion to accept the minutes?
Second.
Seconded? Motion made and seconded. Madam Clerk, because we, just as a point of information, because we have counselors on Zoom, all votes have to be roll call votes.
Counselors Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn, Schnapp, Starr,
Yes.
Tamash,
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
You have 10 yes.
Okay. Okay, tonight we also have three workshop or presentations for us to update us on various projects. The first is an update from the Comprehensive Financial Advisory Committee, and that's given by Hector Gunther. And I don't know if your committee is here. Any of your committee are here? No?
I'm all by myself.
All right, well, thought they'd give you some backup there, Hector, but,
Well, I have the outgoing liaison for CFAC, President Tamish, and the incoming liaison, Betty Lutke. I'd like to thank them both for their service. I'm Hector Gunther. I've served on CFAC since 2018. And last fall, last summer, I was elected chair. There are 7 other CFAC members. We are all experienced professionals from a variety of backgrounds. I'd like to name the committee members. Chuck McKenzie is the vice chair. Chris Lauzon is the clerk of the committee. Chris King is our newest member. He's a refugee from the high technology industry. Tom Keene, he's a relatively new member. Jeremy Shea has been a great addition of the next generation. He's a history teacher at the Barnstable High School. He's been a great addition. Jim Sproul, he's doing his second tour on CFAC. And then Lillian Wu, who was our chair for, I think 7 or 8 years until she stepped back last summer. So anyway, it's a great group. Our charge, as you know, is to advise town council and town management on financial and budget matters. It's wonky stuff, but it's very important stuff. You councilors have a variety of big challenges facing you in the months and years ahead. You should feel free to call on CFAC to assist you in your decision making. One of the big challenges that the council faces, perhaps the biggest, is how to pay the debt service on borrowing for the Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. The acronym for that is CWMP. We also just refer to it as the sewer project. In the looking ahead section of CFAC's annual financial overview issued last fall, that's this document which we print, CFAC wrote in a section called Looking Ahead, it's on the last page, funding the CWMP over a 30-year period requires careful financial planning. We need to explore funding mechanisms, potential grants, and debt management strategies to ensure that costs are spread equitably among Barnstable taxpayers without overwhelming our annual budgets. Mark Milna, the very able Director of Finance, who's a key
a key ex officio member of our committee. He's created last summer an Excel-based financial model to help the town plan how to cover CWMP debt service. And our committee believes that this model is a critically important financial planning tool for the town. You councilors asked CFAC to conduct an independent analysis of the CWMP funding model to, among other things, test it for financial soundness, to assess whether the 18 financial assumptions in the base case are, in our opinion, realistic, and then thirdly, to analyze some alternative scenarios to the base case, which was developed by the Finance Department. And as you know, CFAC performed this analysis. It was circulated to the town council, I believe, in December. And for the benefit of folks in the room and watching on TV, CFAC's assessment can be found in an 8-page memo that's posted on the CFAC website, which is a subset of the Town of Barnstable website. The committee welcomes any comments or questions from residents about this memo. But in summary, CFAC's analysis found that the CWMP financial model is well constructed. We believe that the base case assumptions are conservative, especially given all that we know about the current economy, interest rates, and town costs and tax rates. Note one important limitation of this model. It only evaluates the town's ability to pay debt service on the $432 million in sewer projects that were identified in the capital plan that you all approved last spring. It was the 5-year capital investment plan, or CIP, for the period fiscal 2025 to fiscal 2029. When the town council approves a new 5-year capital investment plan, which is coming up in a few months, the CWMP model will also need to be updated to take account of the new round of spending. Also note that the model forecasts in the base case that the town will need to contribute $234 million, roughly $5.5 million a year, to CWMP costs from general fund revenues over the 35-year period ending in 2061. And that period, it matches the amortization period for the debt taken out to pay for the plan. The balance of costs of the project are projected to be covered by lodging taxes, short-term rental taxes, and meals taxes that this council has voted to dedicate to the sewer project. To test the model, CFAC asked the Finance Department to create 4 alternative scenarios to the base case. The first 3 are negative cases, or what we would have called in the banking business downside cases. The first one is a case where New England Wind 1, which is the offshore wind project known as Park City Wind LLC, instead of paying $16 million in a lump sum to the town, pays 0. And this scenario would occur, for example, if the project were canceled. If this were the case, according to the model, the town would need to contribute an additional $37 million over 35 years from general funds versus the base case. So that's $37 million over the $234 million that the base case estimates. So that's one scenario. The second scenario involves a recession. And this case is also a negative, as you might surmise. Versus the base case, it would require the town to have to fund $53 million more in CWMP costs from general fund revenues versus the base case. And then the third scenario, which is the most downside of the 3, combines the first scenario and the second scenario. That is a recession together with cancellation of the Park City Wind project. In this case, the town would be on the hook for $84 million in incremental general fund spending on the sewer project versus the base case, again, over the next 35 years. Our fourth scenario is a positive one. It mimics the base case with the exception that the town's borrowing rate from the Massachusetts Clean Water Trust, which you all know is a critical source of low-interest financing that the town, that Mark Milne and his team do everything to tap as much as we can. If the town's borrowing rate from the trust drops to 0.3% from the current level of 1.7%, this lower rate would apply if the town adopts flow-neutral land use policies. And in this scenario, the 1.4% reduction or 140 basis point reduction in interest costs over 35 years would result in a steep decline in general fund spending on CWMP, $111 million less than the base case. So that's the upside scenario that we tested. And scenario 4 is, of course, especially relevant tonight in view of tonight's upcoming agenda item to discuss the flow-neutral land use policies. So to conclude, CFAC advocates continued regular use and updating by the town of the CWMP funding model. It's a critical tool, in our opinion, for this council to employ as the sewer project moves forward. And now I'd be happy to take any questions.
Thank you.
Yep.
Councilor Ledke?
Thank you, Hector. That was terrific. I wonder if you could tell us, how agile are you to give us the warning we'd need if we did need a debt override? I mean, is that going to come up suddenly? Do you feel like your constant analysis, your downside looks keep us in a position where we'll know that with plenty of advance? And and then sort of a second piece, let's say that fails. The voters say, no, hell no, I can't do it. Then what happens? What then happens? Have you done that analysis, or could you do that analysis?
Well, I can take a couple of educated guesses. First of all, we have good visibility into revenues from the town going forward. So, for example, if we know that a recession is coming, then tax revenues, lodging, meals, short-term rental would be down. But we would know that, and we'd be able to make a forecast of the extent of the diminution in revenues from taxes. So it's as far as the CWMP is concerned, I don't think it would be an emergency thing. I think it would be, you would have 12 or 18 months visibility at a minimum. On your second question, we haven't run that case, but you know, I think, you know, if the voters, if this council launched a debt exclusion override and the town turned it down, well, that would put pressure on the town's general fund budget to come up with additional revenues to support the shortfall. So remember that the CWMP is sort of it's a closed loop. It's funded by tax revenues that you all approved, plus at the current rate, about $5.5 million a year from the general fund revenue. If the voters turn down a debt exclusion measure, that there would be pressure to increase the amount from the general fund, which would in turn put pressure on the town's funding of other services that come out of the general fund. So that would be my answer to that. The debt exclusion, this town doesn't have a great track record since 2000 in debt exclusion measures. As you all know, we've had 4 or 5 of them since 2000, and one passed, the measure for the regional technical high school. The other 3 or 4 all failed by significant margins. So debt exclusion measure is probably a last resort. If I were in your shoes, I would say, that would be a hard sell to the town, especially since, as you probably know, there's pressure from the school department. They have big-time capital spending coming up, and there's the possibility that they might be asking for a debt exclusion measure too. So you'd have to weigh both of those. I hope I've answered your question.
No, that was very good. And then I did note, I think I'll be 102 when you said that we'd be done with this. But
Yeah.
of course, that's if things stay on track. I expect they will not stay on track. So.
Now, I would say you're probably all aware that in the new bill from Governor Healy that's currently on Beacon Hill for consideration, there are a variety of measures that will allow towns to increase the tax rates for things like meals, short-term rentals, and lodging. So there's some upside there, assuming that the bill gets passed. As you know, there's a lot of pressure these days to keep tax increases down to a minimum. I happen to think that these taxes are, they're less controversial in some ways than, say, property tax increases or certainly income tax increases. But that is an upside that the town could benefit from if that bill does pass. How much additional revenue, we'd have to run the numbers to make an estimate. But if the bill passes, then the town council would need to vote to increase these tax rates. So you guys would have to go on record supporting those. Other questions?
Thank you. Any other questions? Councilor Levesque?
Thank you, President Tamish. Thank you for the presentation. And just to go back a little bit also, too, you had a subcommittee, which you were a member of, and Mr. Kleinfeld came up and spoke in regards to give us a review just about a year ago, right?
So that was last year's CIP subcommittee of CFAC.
And if I remember correctly, he said that at that point, we were looking at a debt exclusion override ask, and the recommendation was this year.
Right. And what changed is, of course, that the revenue assumptions that Mark Milne came up with in the finance department, which, as I say, in my judgment, they're quite conservative, but he found additional money.
Correct.
So that, at least, that warded off the likelihood of a debt exclusion measure. He wouldn't name a year in the future when it might be necessary.
I think he said 2029 with the 16 million in his last report to us. Again, if somebody can correct me if I'm wrong, or Mark, you might be listening in Zoom land. But yes, I mean, so in past years, it's always been come up that this debt exclusion override, is it this year that it's going to happen? Is it this year that it's going to happen? And there is that, and thanks to Mark. And also, too, we've had our revenue sharing program that we have in regards with the school. We had a bump up a couple years ago in our Chapter 70A aid, where we were the second largest percentage increase, mostly due because of our English as a second language to the school, but because we have that 60-40 split with the school department, we actually benefited from that. The general fund benefited from that, which gave us it bought us some time. So it's finding these buckets of money, doing that. And again, having that flow neutral discussion. I'm glad it's back on the docket. It was something that we were aggressively looking at back in 2023. It stopped for a period of time, but I'm glad it's back in discussion because that will save us if we can come up with a policy that makes sense for our town. Is something that we should definitely look into as far as saving money. And then as far as the subsidies go, yes, the Cape and Islands Resource, if that can keep Water Resource Protection Fund, if that can keep coming, and hopefully we do not have a recession. Those types of all these things that the crystal ball, right? So being on the council for 8 years is sometimes it's hard to read the tea leaves, so to speak. But very grateful for CFAC and your input, and of course Mark Milne's direction. So, but it is if Park City Wind gets canceled, we definitely need to and services. And I've heard this a number of times. Without those growth dollars, Mark Ells, I've heard say a number of times, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, correct me if I'm wrong, but we will most definitely look at cutting services. So if we do not get a debt exclusion override. So thank you.
Well, It's, this model that Mark developed has 18 assumptions. One of the 18 has to do with yes or no on the 16 million lump sum from Park City Wind. But there are 17 other assumptions, and none of us has a crystal ball. None of us can predict the future. I personally think that the likelihood of a recession in the next couple of years is not that high. I also think that interest rates probably are not going to drop. If anything, they'll stay where they are, perhaps tick up a little bit, depending on what goes on in Washington. But there are multiple assumptions in there, and you could knock yourself out coming up with various scenarios. We picked 4 that we thought were reasonable and instructive to folks who make the decisions on taxes in this town. So, but it's a valuable tool. And, I don't know if any of you is very facile with Excel, but you could get Mark to send you the Excel model. And there's a cover page. It's called the dashboard. And all 18 assumptions are listed one after another. And you can tweak the assumptions and see what happens to the cash flow associated with CWMP. So I would encourage you, if any of you wants to sit with me, and I can bring my laptop, I can do it with you if you like. But that would give you an idea of how valuable this tool is.
Thank you. Councilor Dickelson?
Thank you, President Tamish. So if the state does allow an increase in taxes and that was something we were to consider, we could have CFAC rerun the model and show us how that would positively
because
impact.
there's 3 of the 18 assumptions are meals tax rates, short-term lodging rates, and short-term rental rates. So yeah, we can tweak each of those. I think the percentage increase that will be allowed is not, on a marginal basis, is not that great. But yeah, you could rerun the numbers and see what the revenue implications would be depending on the year when the new tax rates were introduced.
Well, I want to thank you for always making Math for Dummies a lot more enjoyable. Thank you.
Any further comment? Councilor Schnepp? Oh, excuse me. Star. Your picture's so tiny there. Councilor Starr.
There's Mark.
Okay. Good evening, President Tamish. I'd like to say to Hector, I think your group has done a wonderful job. I've been to most of the meetings. It's, we have to think about CFAC as being parallel to a financial committee. Most other towns have financial committees. They will sometimes, for town meeting, make a recommendation. I think the numbers here speak for themselves, since we only have one of the 4 options that seems to have a plus for the town. We have to remember, though, that we're only looking at 5 years. We're looking at 2025 to 2029. And I think as part of the CWMP process, it's going to have to be run out to the end of 30 years. So it's going to look a lot different. We're only looking at 5 years. Right. And we can save $111 million, which is about $2.7 million a year. I don't know, Mr. Milne, if I did that right. If I divide 111 into 30 years, does that make sense?
Roughly.
So it's about $2.71 million a year. So I think it speaks for itself. And I think we'll understand after we have the next workshop with Mr. Kupfer that growth is built into this, into our CWMP already. So flow neutral is where we're hoping to go anyway. So thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, flow neutral land policy, I'm not that knowledgeable about it, but on the face of it, it sounds like a good idea. But any policy change has unintended consequences, and it's for your all's job is to anticipate and maybe try to mitigate those if you decide to vote in favor of this for the town. But the interest rate savings would be enormous if the town did it. So I think if only for that reason, you ought to take a good hard look at it.
Very good. Any further comment? Hector, I'd like to thank you and your committee and Mark Milne for the work that they've done on this. It's tremendous, having attended
and it's
many
a true
of the meetings.
Group effort. Yep.
I know how much work you put into it, time.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, it's now my pleasure to introduce Maggie Downey, the Chief Administrative Officer for Cape Light Compact, who is going to give us an update on their programs and what they have to offer. Along with her is Dave Anthony.
Good evening, David Anthony, Director of Asset Management. I've also been the Town of Barnstable Cape Light Compact rep to the governing board since 2006. I currently serve as the secretary for that organization, and Sean Hogan is our alternate who sits on the board. I have the pleasure today to introduce Maggie Downey, who's the administrator of the Cape Light Compact. As part of the regular outreach to all of the communities that make up the Cape Light Compact, she comes out and speaks to boards of selectmen and to this town council. It's been a couple of years, I think, since we've had an opportunity to do that. So that's part of our responsibilities of being part of the Cape Light Compact. So I will definitely turn this over to her at this point.
Thanks, David. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for having me here tonight. As Dave said, I'm Maggie Downey. Nice to see some new faces on the council and some old familiar ones as well. So just for the audience and a reminder, the Cape Light who is the Cape Light Compact? The Cape Light Compact is the town of Barnstable. We were established in 1997 by votes of town council and town meeting. So we are a joint powers entity of 15 towns on the Cape and the 6 towns on the Vineyard. We reorganized as a joint powers entity under the 2016 Municipal Modernization Act. Prior to that, we were created through an intergovernmental agreement with all of the towns participating as well, originally as the 2 counties. Our primary functions was, again, we were created as a result of the 1997 Massachusetts Restructuring Act, which restructured the electric utility industry in this state. And we have 3 primary core functions, and I'm going to talk about power supply, which is to negotiate the terms and conditions of a power supply contract on behalf of all ratepayers. It's an opt-out contract. Customers can choose to come and go as they so desire. And I'm also going to talk primarily tonight about energy efficiency, what's happening in Massachusetts, the programs that are available for the residents and businesses of the Cape and Vineyard towns, and then very briefly, if not at all, on consumer advocacy. And our consumer advocacy roles are primarily working on DPU, the Department of Public Utilities dockets, so that the voices of the Cape towns and Vineyard towns are heard in Boston. One thing I'll be talking to the Selectmen and Councilors Association next Friday is about double polls and our involvement in getting feedback from you to that docket on double polls. Oops. So before I start where we're going, I just thought I'd give a snapshot of where we've been. The Cape Light Compact is our energy efficiency budget is 99% of what we do. It's 99% of our revenues, and we plan in 3-year increments. We just finished the last 3-year plan. We are just rolled out the 25 through 27 plan. We're in a kind of a limbo stage. The Department of Public Utility has to approve this plan. It is a fully adjudicated and regulated program. Our budgets are approved. Our programs are approved by the Department of Public Utilities, and it's in a 3-year increment. So we operate on a calendar year, not a fiscal year like the towns do. So our audit was completed last fall for 2023, and in 2023, we had over 2,700 residents and businesses participate in our energy efficiency program within the town of Barnstable, reinvesting almost $6 million in incentives. Those are direct customer incentives, could be through insulation, could have been through new heating equipment, or something as small as a rebate for an Energy Star dehumidifier. So there are significant changes in the next 3-year plan for 25 to 2027 as a result of the law that was passed in 2022, the Climate Act. The Climate Act changed the energy efficiency programs that we deliver by including decarbonization. The legislature has determined that the ratepayer-funded energy efficiency funds will, in order to meet our Global Warming Solution Act goals, which is a reduction in greenhouse gases, I know this is a lot of mouthful, that we are to focus on decarbonizing residents and businesses. Decarbonizing means removing fossil fuel heating systems. Specifically, we have a goal of electrifying 1 million residential structures by 2030. The focus on that are homes that are heated with electric baseboard resistance, propane, and oil. That is the focus, and I'll talk a little bit of the economics on that. And the Climate Act expanded the plan that and the services that we provided. Used to be all about kilowatt hours. How much can we save by changing out lights? Now they have added the mandate of decarbonization. We have specific goals that we were handed down from the state that we have to achieve for greenhouse gas reductions, and actually how many heat pumps, how many electrification homes that we have to set over the next 3 years. The second goal of, as part of the state feedback to us, is on equity. And equity, as I speak to this, it can be kind of a hot button topic these days. When I say equity, I'm talking about non-participants, those that have not participated in the programs. We've been running these programs in the state for a long time, here on the Cape and Vineyard since 2002. So we know historically we've had evaluations, who's participated and who has not participated. And what the data has shown us are renters and moderate income customers have not participated at the same rate as either income eligible or those that are of what I consider market rate. So they're not in that moderate income. So the focus of the plan, the 25 to 27 plan, not only on the Cape and Vineyard, but statewide, is on renters. That's both for commercial properties as well as residential properties and moderate income customers. And then the third piece is customer experience. I take great pride in the fact that our programs we have a local board. You can find me very easily if there's an issue or a complaint. Our staff live and work on the Cape, not the Vineyard, and our offices are here, so we're very accessible. But we've also taken some great steps to improve the customer experience, specifically through 2 programs that we've pursued and something that we've added, which I'll talk to in a second as I go through this presentation. So statewide residential and low-income programs, I want to focus on the equity piece, and hopefully just by sharing this with you, it's televised, it's in your board packet, helping to get the word out about what's changed. So on this chart, you'll see we have always had very, very robust programs for our income-eligible customers. That's going to be anybody that is below 60% of our area or statewide median income. We bring a suite of services, including weatherization, all at no cost. No cost to the participant. Remember, all of these programs are paid for by all of us, reinvesting, keeping the money local, but they are our programs funded by all of us. So they're eligible for weatherization. That's insulation, air sealing, barrier mitigation. That could be a panel upgrade or mold remediation, as well as new heating system electrification at no cost. That little clipboard thing on the right, it's just what I found as an icon for you have to income verify. You have to provide documentation that, in fact, you are below the required household. We bring a suite of services to those that are below that threshold. The dollar amounts we have on our website, we're always available to answer questions if you're not sure, do I fall on this income? But I strongly encourage, I know a majority of our municipal employees that have retired from Barnstable County Retirement Association fall within this threshold of 60 to 81% when they're retirees. Many of us are on fixed incomes, et cetera. It's not an asset-based test. It's based on those that are living in your household and your income for that household. So what's been expanded and what's new now is moderate income. Now you simply have to self-attest. You can call the Cape Light Compact, call the Mass Save number, and say, I'm a moderate income customer. Don't have to income verify. That is new, and you'd get 100% of your air sealing and weatherization covered through the program. If you'd like to proceed, you do have to income verify, and now you will be eligible for the same suite of measures, barrier mitigation, so that's knob and tube, upgrades to your electric panel, vermiculite, asbestos, or mold. Barriers that are preventing you from weatherizing your home and or changing out that heating system to electric. Could be an amp panel going from 100 to 200 amp, so you can actually put in a heat pump. That's a turnkey pathway. We've developed a new, very simple, we've gone out competitively, we'll hire the vendor, and you participate in a vendor as opposed to selecting vendors. That was done for cost control. We also have a rebate pathway still, if you don't want to go through this. And we also have the same incentives for those that are not within this moderate income, lower moderate income pool. 100%, if you're a renter, always 100% covered for your air sealing and insulation. Again, that was determined that in order to engage the landlord, they might not pay the bill, but they have to make an upgrade there property. So it's at no cost to the landlord for renters. If you own your property, 75% of the cost of the installation is covered. We also have generous rebates for heat pumps up to $10,000 for a whole home, or $2,000 per condenser for a partial, meaning you're going to keep your existing system and want to just partially electrify the home. $2,000 a condenser turns out to be maybe $5,500 for the house. So again, lots of incentives, very much focused on the low and moderate income populations throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. These incentives are the same regardless of where you live, whether you're on the Cape, the Vineyard, or you live out in the Berkshires. We have some changes to the heat loan. The heat loan is incredibly popular. Over 1,300 customers on the Cape and Vineyard participated in that. This is a zero interest loan where we take the energy efficiency funds, buy down the interest rate, and allow customers to finance their energy efficiency improvements, such as a heat pump, hot water heater, batteries. Battery storage is included, as well as windows as well. It is, as I said, zero interest, but some changes in order to control cost, again, are based on income. So if you are under 135% of SMI, it's still a 7-year 0% interest rate, but now we're changing where you fall on the income, shorter loans, but still zero interest, but shorter payback periods for the loan. Again, done in conjunction. We work very closely with the Attorney General's office, which is a ratepayer advocate, to make sure to minimize any bill impacts and try and control the cost, because this is a very popular program throughout the Commonwealth of Massachusetts. We will I don't think it's a secret, many of our small businesses rent their space they don't own, so we've expanded up to 100% incentives, including weatherization and air sealing, which is something new. Previously, it wasn't available for spaces that are rented, again, almost up to no cost for the landlord. We've done our Main Streets event many times down Main Street in Hyannis. We'll continue to expand that and come back as this technologies change all the time. The lighting changes, everything. You think, oh, I've already done that. I did that 4 years ago. But everything from refrigeration technology keeps evolving and continuing to bring savings for the ratepayer. And then the second is for charitable. This is something the board should be quite proud of. They pioneered this several years ago, where we have up to 100% incentives for charitable and nonprofit organizations, our houses of worship. We have a ton of them on Cape Cod, and they were struggling with the ability to implement the recommended measures, coming up with that 25% copay. So we've been doing this for close to a decade. This is now something that all of the other investor-owned utilities have implemented and is now available statewide for nonprofits and charitable organizations. There is a budget cap. We want to make sure that there are criteria that have to be met, but most of our nonprofits have fit this and have participated in this program as well. These programs are not inexpensive, as you can see, and they are paid for, as I said, by all of us. You can see the differences between this past 3-year plan was a $205 million plan. The proposed 3-year plan, if approved by the DPU, is going to be a $296 million plan. These plans are fully reconciling, meaning every year we have to file an energy efficiency surcharge with the Department of Public Utilities and go through a fully adjudicated process to make sure that the money, not only did we spend the money the way we were supposed to spend it, but if we didn't spend it, it then changes the next year's collection and allocation. So what you see here is a budget cap. If you don't spend in year one the $168,000 in residential, you collect less the following year. It is an additive. Every year we true up for ratepayer funds by the Department of Public Utilities. But again, these programs, the bill impact, I believe, I didn't include that slide, annually for residential customers cost you about $350 to run these programs here on the Cape and Vineyard. So talking about what have we done to improve customer service and expand things. The compact went after responded to an RFP that the state issued for their Energy Saver Home Loan Program, which is run out of the Massachusetts Climate Bank. And basically, we are what the state calls a concierge service provider. We pursued this program because it fits so nicely with our energy efficiency program and actually does many things that we can't use energy efficiency funds for. So this is a residential homeowner program for up to 1 to 4, can be units. You've got 4 apartments, but mostly on the Cape, you're either going to see duplexes or single family. This is a second loan, or a second mortgage, excuse me, on your home. It is a low-interest loan. I'll talk about the interest rates in a second. The requirement here is that you have to have a 20% energy savings. This also is targeting low and moderate income. I'll get to the income on my next slide, but it enables us to take our energy efficiency funds, what can be funded with energy efficiency, and bring in things that we cannot do, such if you're a moderate income, a roof replacement, such as solar panels. Again, if you're going to electrify, if you heat with old baseboard or propane, moving to a heat pump, you will see a reduction in your overall energy bill. So doing that and then adding in a solar panel, if possible, brings your overall energy burden significantly down. Oil, it is very close. You may find yourself upside down in some months, and those that heat with natural gas, you will be moving into a higher cost by switching to a heat pump at this point in time. There is a DPU, DOER, the state just filed with the Department of Public Utilities to set up a specific winter rate for heat pumps. Again, can't encourage people to electrify, install heat pumps unless we address the high cost of electricity during the heating season. So the Energy Saver Home Loan Program, as I said, we're the concierge service provider for Barnstable, Cape, Dukes, the Vineyard, and Nantucket counties. And it is a second loan geared towards who's ever on your deed. It is, so if the deed is, David and I are on our deed, our income can't exceed $165,000. So our combined income on our income tax can't exceed that $165,000. If we're below, if we're between $98,000 and $165,000, we have a 2% homeowner loan. Anything below the $98,000, you have a 0.5%. This is a 20-year loan. It's a second mortgage. The first 18 months are interest only. Again, in order to move forward, you have to have guaranteed energy savings, which is why it's so important to contact the Cape Light Compact, get involved, get your home energy assessment, and see, is this something of interest to you? But this is a great program, great funding opportunity for residential homeowners to make some significant improvements to lower their overall energy burden and improve the comfort of their homes. The third thing, we finally, after 4 years, David, I think we were working on this, we were able to secure, I'm glad to say, December 26th, we received our first $2.2 million of our $4.9 million loan from USDA to create a Cape and Vineyard solar loan product. So we have currently, it's an interest rate of 2.75%. It's a 10-year loan up to $50,000. We went out with an RFP, hired and selected Cape Cod 5. They are servicing the loan for us. And this is going we announced it on December 2nd. We're going to have another press release conference at the end of this month. And we, almost 50% of the funds are gone already. So it is an incredible, there is a great interest in residential customers being able to install solar to help lower their overall energy burden. We are not able to apply for the second funds until a year after our first release. So that would mean December 27th of this year. Again, that is all contingent upon an appropriation from the federal government. So I can't say whether or not for certainty whether we'll get the additional allocation. It'll depend upon federal appropriation. But we now have 3 paths for homeowners who are interested in pursuing various energy efficiency or upgrades to their home. There is your heat loan path, the Cape and Vineyard solar loan option, and then the Energy Saver Home Loan Program, all with different thresholds, different time frames, different interest rates, which leads us to what we've brought in is we have an energy coach So we have staff that will sit down. You can make an appointment. You can do it virtually. You can do it online. You can come into the office. We will help navigate what is the best path forward. Maybe you don't need to take a loan out for your heating system because you're eligible for it at no cost. But you need to. But if you're going to do this, you need to do that. So again, our services are available to help residential homeowners navigate the path forward if they want to determine what is the best, what's in my best interest. Do you want a shorter loan period but higher payments? Do you want lower payments, longer terms? And on the Energy Saver Home Loan, we are actually, one of the tasks as part of that is to actually help you fill out your loan application documents and walk you through the process so that we can hand you off to the Climate Bank and make sure that loan is a success. So then the last thing I want to end with, and then I'm happy to answer any of your questions, just want to remind everybody, the heart, what we do is we negotiate the terms and conditions of our power supply contract. Our rates changed. We're still below the investor-owned utility rates. We do have a green power product for customers who want to support renewable energy. You can green up. It is a premium on that, but the rates are available. And then I also put in this, we've been doing this, as I said, I've been doing this for a long time, I'm old, since 2002, and I put this together as just a snapshot of where we have been compared to the investor-owned utility rates. And we significantly changed our procurement strategy, and you can see the green line was really, really close to the blue line. There are two periods of time in the early 2000s where we were about a penny or more above the utilities basic service, and it was because of the way we were procuring, and we were caught in both times in hurricanes that had significantly put upward pressure on the market, and we were doing point of purchase. So we've changed our procurement strategy, and it has been very successful. Over 70% of the time over this 23-year period, our rates have been below the utilities and brought in overall significant savings for our ratepayers. And that was my last slide, David.
Thank you, Maggie. I think Maggie's covered a lot of material here, and I think the message for people who are watching or for anyone is that Cape Light Compact recognized that there was not one way to help its customers. Everybody has a unique situation. Some people have 200-year-old homes, some people have rentals, some people own small businesses, some people are part of larger complexes. And as a board, we wanted to try to be nimble enough to be able to meet the needs of so many different people. In some cases, people needed programs for solar. They didn't know what to do. They didn't know who to trust. They were getting flyers in the mail every 2 weeks, not sure who to trust. And Cape Light Compact, having had an established name here on the Cape for nearly 25 years or more now, we wanted to be a resource so that people could get answers to their questions. The number of times that I would get asked questions and I'd kind of scratch my head and say, well, I can tell you what I would do, but we really need to put you in touch with someone who really knows what's happening, who gets the up-to-date information every couple of months, who's able to stay up with that, who's maybe helped 7 other people who are in a similar situation. So we wanted to always build that consumer advocacy as a board, and Maggie, in her consistency of being here since 1998 or before, really offered that baseline, and she's surrounded herself with a group of staff there at the Cape Light Compact that can help out anyone who has any questions about this. Sometimes you ask the question and it doesn't fit, but at least now you can reach out to someone who you can trust. This information is available. We have a robust web presence at the Cape Light Compact. We have some wonderful people there who are very good at answering questions. So we'll try to do whatever we can tonight. I'm available here at Town Hall if people have questions. Maggie is very accessible either by phone or by email at Cape Light Compact in Yarmouth. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. One quick question. You mentioned that some of the programs are available for people that propane, oil, and electrical resistance heating. Why is gas not included?
Gas customers are eligible to participate in all of these programs. They fund you pay into the program just like if you're a natural gas customer, you're paying on your gas bill and your electric bill. It's a long story, but with the Cape Light Compact is not authorized by the DPU to be the lead in a natural gas heated home. So we do the best we can to answer your questions and then send you to our peers, counterparts at National Grid.
Okay.
That's all.
Okay.
But you are eligible for all of these programs. What I was trying to say is, if you heat your home with natural gas, switching from natural gas to a high-efficiency cold climate heat pump is going to end up costing you more money on your overall energy bill, which is why our focus right now is on those customers that heat with electric resistance, propane, and oil, because their savings are there.
Okay, thank you. And one thing, if you could just give your contact information, your website and that.
It was on the last slide, so it's www.capelightcompact.org. And our offices are on White's Path, and the old Christmas tree shop offices on White's Path.
Very good. And I saw several people taking pictures of slides as they popped up. I believe this presentation will be on the website? It's already there. Thank you. Any questions on my right? Councilor Starr.
Thank you, President Tamish. Thank you, and thank you for the presentation, Maggie. I especially like to commend the energy coaches. I think that's something that we've thought about as a town, but it's nice to have a county-wide, have a cadre of people who can answer those questions, because things change all the time. Because they just do. I'd like to put in a plug for your power supply options have been either equal to or better than the electric company. If you get any information in the mail that says, sign up with this electric company, I think you should always go to Cape Light Compact first and just see what their rates are going to be. I've found it I've used it for years and years. And my last question, and I do have a question for Maggie. It's about, in the industrial park, we've had a couple of large apartment buildings built. There's Hanover 1. And they're coming to us saying, well, we're not going to put gas in the building. We're going to put in heat pumps. Are they getting any kind of, as a big company putting in 272 units, are they getting any incentives from Cape Light Compact?
So again, we have an all-electric new construction program that we work very closely with the large developers all over the Cape. So again, without knowing the specifics of which project it is, but odds are that they are participating in the program, and building all-electric enhances. We're bringing all the incentives to the table that we can.
Okay.
It's always important for any project, public or private, to contact the Cape Light Compact at the beginning, so that you can leverage as many funds as you can. It's, when decisions are made and things are built, it's more expensive to retrofit, or if you're already done something, we can't provide you an incentive for something that you were already doing. So early on is it, but I know we are working with several of the developers in Independence Park.
Okay, I know they say they're making these decisions, because they want to be good stewards, and I think there's some financial advantages on the side too. I think that's about it. I appreciate your work, and keep it up. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any comments on my left, questions on my left? Councilor Neary.
Thank you, President Tamish. And thank you, Maggie. I do have a couple quick questions. Historically, I think I'm in Centerville, and I had made inquiries in the past, and I'm under the impression that it wasn't available in certain areas, specifically in Centerville. I don't know if that is the case or not. Secondly, when you go on like the Eversource website, you can look and get there's links to supplier rates, and I don't ever remember seeing CLC listed as an optional rate on that site.
That's interesting. We list them on ours, and if you're looking for a competitive supplier, it is the Massachusetts Department of Public Utilities that maintains all of the list of licensed competitive suppliers. So, there are deals. That's what they are. And how do you get a good deal? You buy a block of energy in the market just when the market is low. The question becomes, for those individuals, you have to pay attention, because usually they're only for a period of time, and you have to make sure that you're watching that electric bill, so that what is that rate going to be when the price ends, and am I better off going somewhere else? if you are a type of person that set it and forget it, a competitive market is not the place for you because you can find yourself paying significantly more. Relative to your question about not available in Centerville, you mean the energy efficiency programs?
The actual rate availability and
No, it's available. It's available everywhere in every town on the Cape and all 6 towns on the Vineyard.
That's great to know. Secondly, regarding deeds, right? Regarding incentives, whether it be the loans, if a home is listed in a trust, how does that affect the?
Trusts are special exemptions that have to be brought to the state. They're not prohibited, but they have to be brought to the Mass Climate Bank, and it's up to them, because ultimately, this was seeded from a grant, and how the Mass Climate Bank keeps it funded is the loans get repaid. So trusts have to be brought case by case back to the state.
And one more, your office could assist in those particular
Yes.
situations. Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Great information.
Thank you. Any further comments? Councilor Starr.
Thank you very much again. One more question. So, Ms. Downey, it sounds like you said that it's easier to build. It's in the long run, it's cheaper for all of us if we build as tight as we can now, because to go back and retrofit some of these houses, and we know probably 80% of the houses on Cape Cod need to be retrofitted. That it seems like something like the stretch code would be along the lines of what you'd like to see happen. And since we're the only town on Cape Cod that isn't a stretch code, where we would build houses tighter than they need to, tighter than the normal building code, I think. So I guess I'm asking, would you endorse that we adopt the stretch code?
You know what? I am out of my wheelhouse on the. I think that's probably very grateful. I'm out of my wheelhouse on the stretch code. That is not something that I can speak intelligibly to. Sorry.
Okay. Well, but thank you for our efforts in the past. Thank you. Okay.
Dave.
If I could kind of bring our benefits from the Cape Light Compact and participation back to the town of Barnstable, there's 2 ways that we have benefited directly from a municipal government standpoint. As Maggie had noted, whenever a new project comes through or a capital improvement project comes through, we are very quick to reach out to the Cape Light Compact because we pay the same rates into energy efficiency as a ratepayer as anyone else does. We participate in all of our electric accounts, and we contribute a significant chunk. When you think about a $400,000 electric bill from the high school, it's a pretty sizable check that goes out. Over the past 26 years, we've been able to benefit from a number of energy efficiencies into our buildings, and we have some pretty expensive buildings. So any chance we get to save $1,000 here or $2,000 there is pretty important. The other thing is that from a power supply standpoint, the Cape Light Compact has gone out and bid out electricity on behalf of all of the municipalities on Cape. They do that through an RFP, and they fix pricing for 2 or 3 years, many times with options built in. The typical power supply contract for residents, it changes every 6 months. We have a hard time budgeting with that kind of inflexibility, that variability. So knowing what our pricing is going to be for 2 years or 3 years really allows us to set those utility rates that we're going to be paying so that we're only subject to the variable of usage and weather. To have 2 variables to try to budget with that would require having to come back in and potentially ask for extra money, and that's always a cumbersome process, even when it's done well. So in this regard, we're able to benefit because the Cape Light Compact, on behalf of all the municipalities, goes out and bids for electric supply. And we run on a different contract. And frankly, there have been times when we've been slightly above the residential rate or the commercial rate, but we've been able to enjoy that budget certainty. So here in Barnstable, we've been able to benefit from being a member of the Cape Light Compact in those regards, in case anyone was wondering how we as a town would benefit from those.
Very good. Any further comment, questions? Thank you both.
Thank you. Nice
Very
to see
informative.
everyone.
Thank you.
Have a nice night.
Okay. I would like to invite Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning and Development, and Dan Santos, the Department of Public Works, up for a discussion on flow neutral.
It's like a snack around here.
Sure.
Excellent. Good evening, everyone. Jim Kupfer, Director of Planning and Development, joined here with Director of DPW, Dan Santos, and Town Engineer, Griffin Bowden. And we're here to talk about the flow neutral policy. Mr. Gunther, who just left, did an incredible job of introducing the subject already. So we have a little introduction. Flow neutral also was presented to the council, maybe predates this council, but I know the link was provided fairly recently, and that provided a little bit of introduction, but in my opinion, a little bit of a wonky introduction with a lot of jargon. And I'm hoping to bring this back to practical terms for this council to really understand what a flow neutral policy is. And really, when we say a flow neutral policy, we're talking about a land use control policy, a very specific type of land use control policy, and I'll get into that. And how this is introduced tonight is to attempt to answer the question, how does the town of Barnstable achieve 0% financing for our wastewater projects? And as you heard from Mr. Gunther, that's something that CFAC is looking at. That's something that I'm sure our CFO has been looking at closely, and I know that's been on the minds of the town council for a while now. So how do we get to a 0% financing for our wastewater projects? So this stems from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund. That fund provides low-cost financing to assist communities to comply with water quality standards of the Clean Water Act. Eligible projects are stormwater management projects and wastewater infrastructure projects. As you know, as you heard, we have a lot of wastewater infrastructure projects current and upcoming. So this is something that certainly the town should be investigating. Interest rates are below market through this fund with terms of 20 to 30 years. The base rate is 2%. We currently are a housing choice community, so we're sitting at the 1.5%. Now, we need to be specific here. We do borrow at 30 years, so we're actually talking about a 1.8% interest rate. And when we talk about 0%, because we're borrowing at 30 years, we're actually talking about a 0.3% interest rate. So slight difference, but certainly a savings there. So how would we get to that 0.3% for 30 years to borrow for wastewater infrastructure through the fund? Well, there's 5 criteria within that fund. The first is a project, very project specific, so a wastewater project that we might be pursuing upcoming and we need a loan for. We would apply that project to this criteria. The project is primarily intended to remediate or prevent nutrient enrichment of a surface water body or a source of water supply. So we would check that box for most of our, if not all of our wastewater projects. We are not currently in violation of any enforcement order or administrative consent order due to a violation of a nutrient-related standard. Luckily, we can check that. The applicant, us, the town of Barnstable, has an approved CWMP, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan. We certainly do, and we currently are updating. And really, this policy would all point back to that CWMP. And again, I'll give you a little more information shortly. The project specific, we're talking about, any project that we were to move forward again with a wastewater project, has been deemed consistent with the Regional Water Resources Management Plans or 208 plans. So that wouldn't really involve the policy itself that we're looking to do. We would just need to make sure that the specific project is in compliance or consistent, with that. And so lastly, as you see there, we do not have a land use control policy specific land use control policy to limit wastewater volume and sewer use and sewer use areas to the amount consistent with our comprehensive wastewater management plan. So again, that's the bottom line there. That's the important line to remember. Land use control policy to limit our wastewater volume and our sewer use areas to the amount consistent with the approved CWMP. So what is a land use control policy? It ensures, again, so back to that line there, that bolded line there, it ensures that wastewater flow within our sewered areas, so the areas we defined in our 30-year plan, do not exceed the amount authorized in our CWMP. So if you step back and think about it a little bit, seems to make practical sense, perhaps. We have a 30-year plan to sewer the area. We have a cap. We have a limit that infrastructure can hold as we are planning it out. And so we are setting a policy, if we so chose, to not exceed that cap during the planned time. So with that, it would enable a 0.3% interest loans from the Clean Water State Revolving Fund for eligible projects. So going back to the flow, so we talk about our build-out, our sewered area, our 30-year sewered area, and the build-out that is being projected. We've done that work, or DPW predominantly has done that work. This is Table 5.3 from our plan, from our approved plan, that says what our build-out through the phases over time would look like. And so we've done what our wastewater volumes and identified our sewer areas that are approved in our CWMP. And so that's when we turn back to any policy, that's an important table to remember, that's our build out, that's how much sewer flow is projected during those phases. And that if we were to potentially develop any policy for the council to consider, we would point back to this table to reflect again how much flow would be anticipated within our plans. So we develop out a policy that points back to our approved CWMP that talks about how much flow, and potentially we would then go to seek a loan for a wastewater project. And this is just an example of any wastewater project that might be upcoming. And this is what you could anticipate that loan service to look like generally. So a $20 million project with that 0.3, so we're doing it over 30 years, would be about 1.3 in interest paid, whereas right now, if we're doing 1.8, we're talking about 6.3. So, we're talking about a $5 million potential savings on any $20 million project, and you can extrapolate up or down, however you like. So the granting authority of any policy is DEP. DEP, I failed to mention, I believe is on the line this evening. Michelle from DEP, who's been phenomenal, and we've walked her through, what our thoughts are on this, and these generally are in line with what they have been approving in terms of policies at the state. So this policy, if we were to consider developing out this policy, again, would be eligible for that 0.3% loan. If we were to develop out a land use policy, it would have to go to DEP for their approval. Several Cape Cod towns have already taken advantage of this. Chatham, Falmouth, Harwich, Mashpee, Sandwich, Yarmouth, all have taken advantage of creating a land use policy that talks about, developing out strategically in their comprehensive water management plan the total of flow and limiting that flow to that total. Harwich, I will bring up shortly, is a model that I think perhaps the town council could consider as at very least a starting point in terms of a simple model that would have Barnstable, would allow for the town of Barnstable to create a land use control policy that points back to our CWMP and the total growth. So what would a potential policy look like? The town could opt to pursue, again, a very simple ordinance that states that the town's wastewater flow will not exceed the capacity of our sewer infrastructure, of our CWMP, of our planned sewer infrastructure over the next 30 years. In this scenario, the underlying zoning serves as primary mechanism of land use control. So again, this is a land use control for the very specific term of the sewered areas, doesn't touch zoning, doesn't touch our saltwater estuary ordinance, doesn't touch any of those other mechanisms that are already in place that control our current land use items. Wastewater flow would be assigned on a first-come, first-served basis. So as the sewer is going down, individuals can hook onto our sewer system, as we've outlined in our plan. And as I mentioned, it could look very similar to the Harwich model. So this is, sorry, it's a lot of letters, but it's basically to show you that from here to there, that's the entire ordinance, here and here. So the sections, it starts with just a very general introduction. These are our general land use controls. And if I didn't already, I'll share the link with the council. And it basically just, again, speaks to wastewater flow management in the town of Harwich, which is very similar to what we could offer. Land use controls for the town of Barnstable that agree with our approved CWMP. Sorry, I see a lot of you guys are reading it, so I don't want to jump to the next slide there. But I can go back in just a moment.
Go ahead.
Yeah, we're gonna get a copy of it anyways. And then there's just two other sections, and those two other sections are, you gotta connect to sewer at some point, and we're gonna point back to our CWMP and the total CWMP flow. So that table you see there, it's a little bit different than the one I just showed you, but we can match that table. This table reflects as it's defined in this table, sewer service areas, which we have in our comprehensive wastewater management plan. It more reflects the watersheds, perhaps, and DPW, the engineers can correct me, but we have our sewer service areas defined by watersheds, which come down to our total flow, so our bottom line in our CWMP. So again, and basically what Harwich does is, again, the simple ordinance where we point back, we've done all of our hard work in our CWMP. We have a 30-year plan for sewer. We are seeking not to advance beyond the total flow of our CWMP. And we can create an ordinance for potential cost savings for future projects. So my question to the council is, shall staff begin to create a land use control policy that town council may consider at a future hearing? And we could certainly work together collaboratively to develop out that policy for your consideration. And happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Councilors, by the way, Jim, would you introduce Michelle from DEP? You said she was on Zoom?
Yeah, Michelle, are you on? Would you like to introduce yourself?
Oh, yep. There you go.
Good evening. I'm Michelle Mucknock-Higgins. I'm the program manager for the State Revolving Fund.
Welcome. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you.
Councilor Penn, you had a question?
Yes, I just have a question as to what prevented the town from creating this policy in the past. I don't understand the downside of this, to be honest with you. Everything that you've presented here this evening is to our advantage for doing this. Obviously, our CWMP has already estimated the volume, I would assume on a parcel by parcel basis or by a neighborhood by neighborhood basis. And I just didn't know if there was a land use control policy, a reason that we didn't automatically have one. It doesn't make sense that we don't have one. So I was just curious as to why we didn't do this before.
Town Manager Els.
Good evening, Mark Els. Your question, and good evening, Councilor Penn. Your question could be better answered by the past presidents and councils that have existed. This has been an issue that certainly in my 35 years here, and I know that Rob O'Leary's sitting in the back of the room, who actually, brought this forward to our legislature and ultimately adopted, on the regulatory side of what we're doing here in working with DEP. But so I'll share my opinion. I think there were concerns about how it would limit growth. I don't know how much further I can go than that. We've presented it numerous times as staff. Certainly Mark Milnes looked at it as a financial option. It isn't exactly clear how it will limit growth because the Public Works and the former wastewater facilities plan, which used to be what you would say before we said comprehensive wastewater management plan, were both there. They were approved. They had the same sort of projections in them. But I think not being able to answer that one specific question, how will this limit growth once the town invests in the infrastructure, prevented this from proceeding to an affirmative vote. So again, that's my opinion, having observed it. So
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone on my right? Questions? Councilor Levesque.
Being the past president,
There you go.
I can speak to that. It was definitely an idea of the leadership before I became president, but I think it became apparent to me and to, I should say, with Vice President Schnepp, who served me for 2 years, and then Vice President Cullum then after, that it was something that should be discussed and something brought forward, hence why you saw the workshop prior, and it was something that we were very active in talking about in 2023, about moving this forward and meeting certain deadlines of when we could get this done. And quite honestly, when I asked Mark Milne, when for budgetary concerns and for fiscal 23-24, he said we kind of missed that, so again, I kind of accelerated the discussion, and then for whatever reason, it paused, for the coming fiscal year. But like I said, here we are, and I think it is, worthy of discussion and worthy of seeing what Director Comfort and Director Santos can come up with. So I'm definitely in favor of moving forward. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Starr.
Oh, thank you, President Tamish, and thank you, Mr. Kupfer. I think we need to keep in mind that the CWMP, excuse me, was designed with growth built in. It's designed for build out based on the zoning that we have now, but we're not locked into each parcel. I mean, they looked at each parcel and figured out what was possible on each parcel. But we also need to realize that we're not stuck with those zoning. We can move things around. If Barnstable Land Trust buys 8 acres of land, we could take the capacity from that and put it somewhere else. And growth in the town, we need growth so to keep up with inflation. But if you look at Margaritaville, that's growth. That's redevelopment. Redevelopment is growth, and I think we're going to see much more of that. The Landing is growth. So I think we're going to see much more of that as compared to build out when we still, we think about Cape Cod and there's still only 14% of the land that's not developed, that's developable. And I appreciate Ms. Higgins being here. I know that SRF program we're not up against a timeline at the moment. They've been very flexible with us. So we don't have, we can't wait for, I wish that this had been done last year. But I think we're in a position where we can do it now. And I would really love to hear from each counselor what they're thinking and what questions they have. I mean, 3 or 4 of us can talk about this, but what's your impression so far? I would ask everybody. Thank you.
Okay. Did any counselor want to respond? Counselor Turkelson?
Thank you, President Tamish. Jim, when you mentioned something about the order in which you hook up, like first come, first served basis, can you just explain that concept to me?
Yep. So it's much like it sounds. So as the sewer is going down the road, as you're hooking up, that is eating into essentially our growth capacity. So we're not limiting it to holding off certain capacity in certain areas until such time maybe it becomes reality. It's truly as you want to hook on, you are being added into our system.
But if we're requiring everybody to hook up, I think that's where the disconnect is for me. I'm going to be sewered. I don't really have a choice. I have 6 months to hook up. So when you say first come, first serve, that doesn't make sense to me, because if we've already planned out, say it's 7,500 homes that we need to sewer, I'm just wondering where the first come, first serve limit would be exceeded, because we've built that in plus growth.
Right.
So that just doesn't add up to me.
Yep.
I'm probably just missing something really simple.
No. So it's exactly that. So it is taking into account that you will hook up, and as we're developing out that sewer, maybe hopefully every single family home as we're going down will hook up, and everything that is developed or currently developed right now will hook up, and our CWMP takes that into account, and then all the other parcels that potentially could be developed. And we looked at our zoning. So as many of you are aware, most of our community is 2-acre single-family homes. So that is the growth factor for that. The growth factor for certain other areas is more. So downtown Hyannis is a little bit more. Independence Park, as we're well aware, is a little bit more. So those variables were taken into account as we're developing out that growth number. So yeah, so hopefully we don't at any point will exceed this growth number, because we've done that planning that says, okay, here's existing conditions. We're taking into account all those that are going to have to hook up. And then we're also taking into consideration what our current land use controls will allow for outside of this. So hopefully we aren't bumping up at any point in the near future. There are circumstances out of our control, like say 40Bs, for instance, that may eat into our growth that we weren't projecting. But as was, I think, Councilor Starr mentioned, if BLT purchased, like we purchased in Marston's Mills, a large lot of land, that will then never be developed out. So there's that push-pull, that's out there. That's a practical aspect of it. So hopefully that's a long-winded way to answer your question.
And so if we were to get to the level where we're maxed at our capacity based on the plan, and that's the limit, we, in theory, shouldn't go over that limit. And let's just say, for whatever reason, I'm going to get a hypothetical, we had 10 40Bs come in, and we ended up with 500 extra units, and then we have a section over here that's supposed to be sewered. What happens to those people that were planned to be sewered, but now it's capped, so we don't have those properties over there available? You know what I'm saying?
Try to help with that question. So Griffin Bowden, town engineer. So back to the presentation and the table that Jim presented in the presentation, there are kind of different buckets of flow that are allocated through the CWMP. There's the existing flow, then there's the planned connection flow from each phases, right? So that's the existing flow within the phased areas that we'll be connecting. So we're taking into account how much flow is going to come into the system when we connect those homes. And then at the bottom, there's the build-out projections. So within both the existing sewered areas as well as the areas we're projecting to go in and sewer, there's build-out that's factored into there. There's that other bucket. So from the factor of trying to ensure that we don't exceed any of those things, when we have new development come into town, we'll need to be monitoring the build-out portion of that and ensuring that we're not exceeding the flow that we projected in there. Because the single-family homes out in the western part of town, for instance, that we're going to connect as part of the project of the sewer connection program, that's factored into the projections for the phases. Does that make sense?
I guess I'm just wondering if we have, I mean, I guess it goes back to Councilor Penn's question. You know, I mean, it sounds like there is some limit and there is a potential we could meet that in some hypothetical scenario. But it sounds like from the engineering and that you feel like that's a very, you know, relatively low risk of meeting that cap and then not being able to sewer the supposed homes we said we were going to sewer because we put in some other development somewhere else. And I mean, it sounds like that's a low risk that will be exceeding the plans that we've set forth for us.
I mean, ultimately, the plan did the work to try to study on a parcel-by-parcel basis, working with the planning staff at the time, what we think the build-out could potentially be, and it was a conservative estimate, and then took a factor of that, so a 33% factor of the projected build-out was what was anticipated within the planning period, and that's what's reflected in that table. So that was felt to be the conservative build-out projections within the planning period at the time. Go ahead, Dan.
Griffin, would you mind?
I think
if
there's one point, I'm sorry. I think there's one point that should be made, and there's a relief valve in this. And what that is if we are keeping track of growth and if we're seeing trends where additional flow is coming in that we weren't anticipating, that was above and beyond that which we include for planning, then we have to go back to the state and to the Massachusetts Environmental Protection Act review to get and do a notice of project change to increase our CWMP flow numbers. So only then will we be able to exceed those numbers. So it's not like that what's in the CWMP is hard and fast forever. We have the ability, as the community grows in ways that we may not anticipate today, to go back and do a change. And the purpose for that approach is that the state then gets to weigh in, and all the state agencies, on whether this is appropriate and whether we are considering the environment as we're supposed to, and that we still are in compliance with the Clean Water Act requirements. So that's the relief valve that I think that you might have been concerned about. Well, what happens if? I mean, we can't just turn off the water or not connect these people. So there's a planning aspect to this that we have to make sure, and we have been thinking about that with these new housing developments. So, okay, well, the rate of construction seems to be a little more rapid than we were anticipating. So we're going to talk about this with the CWMP ad hoc committee, is do we need to include modifications to flow in our 5-year update? And so the process allows for this kind of iterative analysis and implementation. So hopefully that helps.
Ms. Higgins, did you have something you wanted to add?
And that's what I was going to say. And part of your land use controls, should you decide to proceed, would being able to put that into, if you do change your CWMP or put a notice of project change, that if you needed to alter a sewer area, that is the process for you to be able to do that. You would then have to go back if the CWMP notice of project change was approved, and you would have to alter your land use controls. But it's built in with a 30-year growth plan that as you proceed, things may change. So there is the ability to do that.
Okay, thank you. Councilor Schnapp.
Thank you, President Tamish, and thank you, team, for presenting this information on flow neutral. And I think it's as simple a way as possible. It has a lot of moving parts. And the one part that I wanted to ask Jim, I think you said that we would continue, or whatever the policy that you're putting before us, which seems pretty simple, would be in coincident with existing policy that we have in town. And I think most frequently of the interim estuary regulations that we have that control growth in quite a large area that will be sewered at some point in time. And if we keep that in place, but also approve this policy, I'm guessing that we're still going to be limiting the number of bedrooms on those parcels that are currently under those interim regulations?
So I don't believe the saltwater estuary ordinance is applicable to those connecting to sewer, if that's your question. Correct.
Okay. I thought there was some overlap because that covers a lot of area, but maybe it doesn't. Maybe those are completely separate areas.
The Board of Health
Yep.
regulations for the saltwater
Right.
estuary. Yeah, that's for septic related projects.
Okay,
But-
aren't there going to be certain parcels that will be sewered that are currently under those septic regulations?
I would imagine so, yes, because as the sewer is going by these structures, they will need to connect. So yes, they certainly would. So there would be
Okay.
overlap. I don't want to cut you off. You can continue on, please.
No, so when it flips from being septic to sewer, those interim regulations would no longer apply because they just apply to those parcels that are on septic. Is that
No, that, at the moment, that estuary overlay district, while that is in place, then those restrictions will remain in place. Now, for that to change, so when we sewer these areas, and if we want to lift that restriction on number of bedrooms, then that has to be done through the Board of Health.
Okay.
So it
Right.
is applicable until it's removed or modified.
Right, but it does in a way serve to limit some growth.
Yes.
If those stay in place.
Yep, that's right.
Okay. And then allows, I think this is one of the questions that people, various people have that are getting sewered. Oh, can I add an unlimited number of bedrooms?
Right, but the purposes
once
of
I'm
that.
sewered?
I'm sorry.
And I guess the answer is no, depending on where you live, if you are affected by those regulations.
Well, we want to make sure that we're consistent with how and why we're doing things. So the interim estuary regulation is to reduce nitrogen to our estuaries from on-site septic systems. So once you've sewered those properties, right, restricting bedrooms isn't necessarily fair for the purposes of reducing nitrogen, because you've already done that by removing the wastewater from those properties completely and treating it in the treatment plant.
Okay, thank you.
So I'm going to do a what if. If the Board of Health completely lifted that, would the policy that might be before us on flow neutral, is that adequate to address potential sources of growth? Or are we relying on what Jim called the first in, first come, or whatever that phrase is, so that those folks that ask for that extra bedroom first are going to get it, and if you ask for it 10 years later, you might not because we've reached our capacity?
Okay, so I understand your question.
Okay.
And our thinking on that is because of the amount of growth that's built in, as you saw the table,
Okay.
it's unlikely that we're going to see increases from introducing additional bedrooms that is really going to move the needle on that.
Okay.
It's just not how development and redevelopment residentially has occurred in this community or others. It's just not going to free up thousands and thousands of people and properties to add bedrooms. There will be some, yes, but we believe that's really a small fraction of what the ultimate, build-out numbers represent.
Okay. And I'm assuming there's some coordination that if someone does add a bedroom, that goes back into your formula of the capacity usage of the sewer, the overall sewer system, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, that's great. Well, I'd like to conclude my comments back to Councilor Starr. I have been a proponent of us passing a flow neutral policy for several years. And I think the approach that has been presented to us tonight seems like a very good first step. And I would definitely encourage us to take the next step for a policy to be developed and brought back to us.
Thank you. Any further comment, am I right? Councilor Ledke?
Yes, I would just answer the two questions. The first one that Jim had, yes, and the second one that Gordon had, yes. Thank you.
Thank you. Councilor Neary?
Thank you, President Tamish. As the CWMP rolls out, just kind of a food for thought, it's already established the bucket of flow. So I would also think that should technologies improve where alternate innovative systems may be removing some of those sewering in maybe the western part of the town. So that's going to also free up additional, I guess, available flow, would it not?
Yes.
Right? No? Yes?
Short answer, yes. Yeah, so we would not have to be treating that flow at the treatment plant. That would similarly require a notice of project change, as was discussed about the increasing flow estimate, so.
But in terms of the available, to kind of dovetail on adding bedrooms, et cetera, adding more flow in other areas, you're going to be reducing it. It's already in the plan, the flow is already calculated in the plan. Should this come to occur down the road, right, with alternatives, then that flow, there won't be any flow because it's still staying on.
Correct, it doesn't need to be handled by the infrastructure, yeah.
Thank you. I can say, back when this first rolled out, it was, it was a fear. It was basically, change is feared worse than death, right? So that really was kind of the background thought. I know when I was on council, that was kind of what it was. It's like, is this going to dramatically alter plans or future plans or what we were hearing come down the road in terms of growth, in terms of trying to generate tax dollars and those type of things. So I can tell you that, in my particular case, that was the case. So I'm glad to see it come up again. I think there's been much more clarity in terms of what we're looking at. And sure, figure it out. Let's stay on it this time, right? Thank you.
Yeah, a quick question. As far as the fears of too much growth along the sewer line, this does not change the underlying zoning, and we always have the alternative, if we wanted to change the zoning, make it more restrictive as to number of bedrooms or whatever, we could certainly do that, correct? I mean, that would...
Yeah, absolutely. As I started off this presentation, this is a unique land use control policy, and it doesn't change our current land use control policies. And actually, this is fascinating to work alongside with DPW and the CWMP and the update of the CWMP, because it really does help guide our future planning of other land use controls, such as zoning, where we're looking at, okay, well, maybe we didn't anticipate Wilkins 2 or 1 or whatever, what have you. And so let's think about what our future planning initiatives could be for other land use controls. But yes, this one itself, that won't change the underlying zoning. And if we were to get closer and closer to that capacity, then we certainly should be having those conversations as to whether or not we want to adjust our underlying controls.
Okay. To Councilor Starr's question, I've learned a lot tonight. This policy was a little bit vague to me, but I think you've done a great job, and I would certainly be in favor of moving it forward. Councilor Crowe?
Jim, I got a couple of real simple well, maybe not simple, but the CWMP has a certain amount of growth anticipated in the future.
Correct.
Can you give me a percentage of what we have now and how much growth is in that plan? Say, we're going to grow by another 20%, another 10%. Do we know that answer?
Meaning, what's the percentage of growth that we've already taken up capacity for?
That we're planning for,
right,
in these numbers that we have sewered for.
I don't know by percentage, but the table that Jim showed earlier kind of represents that, right? So the existing flow to the wastewater treatment plant is 1.67 million gallons a day. We're projecting through the 30-year planning process about 800,000 gallons in flow. The
Additional
total
flow?
of build-out flow. The additional flow coming to the plant, I'm just going to get the table so I have the right data here. So the existing flow coming to the plant is 1.67 million gallons per day. Phases 1 through 3 will collect an additional 2 million gallons per day, roughly. Stages, the 3 stages that are identified out in Katuitt is 144,000 gallons per day. The residential build-out that's identified in the plan is about 200,000 gallons a day, and the commercial build-out's about 565,000 gallons a day. So the total flow that's identified in the plan is 4.5 million gallons a day. Currently, we collect 1.67. Of that projection, it's about 770,000 gallons a day is what's identified as build-out.
Okay. Additional. So is it, what's the percentage you got? 20%. The other question Jim might have is, as far as Bill is concerned, I think the question is that for some of us will be, who derives the benefits of that build-up? Now, in my village, there's a number of wellhead protection areas that there people are kept to 2 bedrooms, okay? And say this comes forward, is it first come, first serve, or can a developer come in and put 100 units in there and take up all that extra slack? And who determines who gets those benefits?
So ultimately, the policy will be the council to determine how that functions. But as we mentioned in the presentation, many other communities have done first come, first serve. Again, it's the land use controls of the size and scale of any development is not this, it's zoning. So if, for instance, you had mentioned a large-scale development, that would have to adhere to zoning or, other variables, as you're familiar with, like 40Bs or something to that effect. But nevertheless, that would be first come, first serve. So you're eating into that growth, that build-out growth that Griffin had mentioned. But again, there's a pretty significant amount of build-out in there.
So technically, in a wellhead protection area, sewer comes through, and therefore all those restrictions can go away or may not go away. But the first person who comes up and says, I want an extra bedroom, or the developer wants 100 units right away, takes everybody else's opportunity for another bedroom. So how is that fairly adjudicated?
So again, it wouldn't be that the neighbor wouldn't get a 1-bedroom unless we were at complete capacity. So as we're building out the sewer, everyone is required to hook on, and then development must adhere to our other land use controls, so zoning or whatever else is out there at the time. Wellhead protection is still in effect. And so everyone would still be eligible for their bedroom unless we truly were bumping up to that capacity. And then I think we would be back having that discussion with our council about what's our next steps. Do we amend this policy? Do we amend other land use controls to ratchet it back because we're now up to the limit? I think that would be the conversation we would have to have, hopefully well into the future.
And you said wellhead protection would still be in effect. Why would that be the case if all the sewage is being taken out?
Are you referring to the saltwater estuary ordinance? Because the wellhead protection ordinance is a completely separate ordinance. So 50% of impervious surface, 30% natural vegetation. That's all still there. That's an ordinance in place now. That's another land use control.
Okay, I'm not sure that, well, okay. I'll think about it. Thanks.
Yep.
Thanks. Jimmy, you mentioned 40Bs a couple of times. They would not trump any other project or be in addition to this if we were bumping up against the limit? I mean, they would still be subject to these controls, correct?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, they would be first come, first serve. If we didn't have sewer capacity, they would have to provide proper infrastructure.
Okay.
So through a permitting process, that would be our first question. How are you going to provide proper infrastructure? And if we can't provide sewer, what's your alternative?
Okay, thank you. Any further comments or questions on my left? On my right? Gordon? Councilor Stark, excuse me.
Thank you again. At the last CWMP, excuse me, committee meeting, we had Andrew Gottlieb from Mashpee came, and he said, we're looking at, you can balance hypotheticals about what might happen 20 years down the road, or we can save taxpayers $2.7 million a year. So if we can save our budget $2.7 million a year, I'm willing to take any kind of risk going down the road. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further comment? Seeing none, thank you very much. Oh, excuse me, Councilor Penn.
Yes, thank you, President Tamish. I just want to know, Mr. Kupfer asked a very simple question before when he was doing his presentation. He just wanted to know if the council would support land use control policy. It sounds like something that might at some point in time need a vote from the council, or can you just direct planning and development to come up with that policy without a vote? I'm just curious.
I don't think we would need a vote. I think that, we would just have them come forward with a policy, and we would then put it on the agenda and discuss it, and modify it, vote it up or down.
I look forward to it at the next meeting or the one after that, if so. Thank you.
I'm not sure about the next meeting, but Jim will be burning the midnight oil, I'm sure.
Absolutely.
All right, well, thank you. And Ms. Higgins, thank you very much for spending some time with us.
Thank you all.
Thank you. Okay, I think what we're going to do is we're going to take 10 minutes, and we will be back. Clark, who will make a motion to withdraw item 2025-060.
Thank you very much, President Tamish. I move that we withdraw agenda item 2025-060 so that it can be re-advertised for the March 6th, 2025 Town Council meeting.
Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any discussion on the motion? Seeing none. Madam Clerk?
Counselors, Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes. Yes.
Yes, passed.
Thank you. Councilman Levesque, would you mind reading in 2025-072?
Yes, thank you, Mr. President. This is new business may be acted upon by a majority vote. This is item number 2025-072, authorization to contract for and expend a fiscal year 2025 jail arrest diversion program component grant in the amount of $117,500 from the Commonwealth of Massachusetts Department of Mental Health as written.
Second.
Thank you. Chief Chalice.
Good evening, President Tamish, council members. Jean Chalice, Police Chief. The department is requesting permission to expend funds from a Department of Mental Health jail diversion component grant totaling $117,500. The grant provides funding primarily for use by our Community Impact Unit for outreach and stakeholder meetings to help us divert people away from both the court system and the emergency room to push them towards more stabilized services. And it also provides funding for training and overtime so that officers can attend community crisis intervention team training, mental health first aid training, and this year we're also going to be sending a number of officers to Struggle Well training. And then it also provides funding for us to administer the grant. We use it to attend the annual Youth Commission Substance Abuse Forum and the Mental Health Law Enforcement Conference.
Very good. Thank you. Any questions for Chief Chalice? Seeing none on my right, on my left, online. Very good. Just kind of as a side issue, as many are aware, because we're talking about mental health, the governor's proposed closing Pecasset Mental Health Center, which would remove those, I believe there's 19 beds there. So a letter has been drafted. We couldn't get it on the agenda for tonight, but at the next meeting, we'll be presenting a letter in opposition to the closing of Pecasset. So, all right. So this is a roll call vote, majority. Madam Clerk?
Counselors, Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick.
Yes.
12 yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Turkelson, would you read in 2025-073, please?
Thank you, President Tamish. This 2025-073 is an item of new business that may be acted upon by majority vote. The approval of the appointments to the Appointments Committee.
Okay. Okay, just, it's a resolve that the town council does hereby approve the town council's appointments of Councilor Jeffrey Mendez, Councilor Charlie Bloom, Councilor John Crow, Councilor Seth Burdick, and Councilor Kristen Turkelson as members of the Standing Appointments Committee of the Town Council. Any discussion on that? Seeing none, Madam Clerk?
Counselors, Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
12 yes.
Thank you. Councilor Neary, would you read in 2025-074, please?
My pleasure, President Tamish. It is new business to be referred to a public hearing on February 27, 2025. It's item number 2025-074. It's a resolve approving and adopting the Town of Barnstable 2025 Housing Production Plan dated May 2nd, 2024, as written.
Second.
Okay, motion made and second to move this for a public hearing on 2/27/25.
If you-
No discussion, I believe, on this, correct? So, Madam Clerk?
Councilors Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow.
No.
11 yes, 1 no.
Thank you. Councilor Crowe, would you read in 2025-075, please?
Yes, thank you, President Tamish. This is item number 2025-075. It's for a first reading. It's a item of new business and to refer to the Planning Board. Amending the code of the Town of Barnstable, Part 1, General Ordinances, Chapter 240, Zoning, to add 3 properties to the multifamily affordable housing residential district to allow for by right affordable housing in addition to special permit affordable housing, and to add parking requirements, roof-mounted solar system requirements, principal permitted uses, and other multifamily affordable housing requirements.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. This is a referral to the Planning Board. Madam Clerk?
Councilors Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
12 yes.
Thank you. Motion passed. Vice President Clark.
Thank you very much, President Tamish. Agenda item 2025-076. This is new business which may be acted upon with a majority vote. A resolve delegating authority to the town manager to act on 2 grants of location for 2 National Grid projects.
Second.
Do I have a second? Second. Okay, motion made and seconded.
Good evening, councilors.
Recognize
Tom
them,
LaRosa, First Assistant Town Attorney. As mentioned, this item would delegate to the town manager the authority to act on 2 grants of location for 2 National Grid projects. Both projects involve the replacement of existing subsurface gas regulator stations and associated infrastructure. The projects are situated within the town's roadway right-of-way at the intersection of the Service Road and Oak Street in Centerville, and at the intersection of Oak Street and Old Stage Road in Marston's Mills. For this work in the town's roadway right-of-way, each gas project would need a grant of location from the town, which is basically a grant of permit rights to use and occupy the town roadway right-of-way. The town manager, supported by the DPW, routinely reviews requests for and issues grants of locations involving poles, wires, and conduits for the transmission of electricity and intelligence, think Eversource and Verizon. The town manager does so under delegated authority from the town council and is placed in the town code. This delegated authority is common as the council has delegated authority to the town manager and other town officials for handling an array of state license authorizations under the code. However, following National Grid's inquiry regarding their 2 projects, we realized that the code does not include an explicit delegation of authority for grants of location for gas projects. Accordingly, the requested vote would delegate that authority to the town manager to handle these 2 projects. The town manager, as well as DPW staff supporting the project, would process and handle the 2 grants of location consistent with how they routinely handle grants of location for electric projects, which would include public notice and a public hearing that they would hold at Town Hall. Separately, now that this gap in delegated authority has been identified for granting a grant of location to a gas company, we plan to review and return later to the council with a proposed amendment to Section 121 of the code that would address this delegated authority for future requests of grants of location. I can answer any questions that you might have on this item. If there are technical questions, Diana Durkin-Cuddy from National Grid is on Zoom, and she could speak to their project.
Thank you, and welcome, Ms. Cuddy. Cuddy, I'm sorry.
Thank you, yes.
Councilor Starr, you had a question?
My question is this gas work, is it maintenance work, or is it making capacity larger for future projects?
So actually, it's neither really. It's a reliability project. We have existing regulator stations in the town, and we're replacing them. These are more for safety. There's a redundant system in the modernized regulator stations, and also for reliability.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Yep, my pleasure.
Any further questions on my left? Any questions on my right? Seeing none. Madam Clerk, we'll go for a vote.
Councilors Neary.
Yes.
Penn.
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes.
Starr.
Yes.
Tamish.
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Burdick.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
Levesque.
Yes.
Ludke.
Yes.
12 yes.
Thank you, Ms. Cuddy. Thank you for joining us tonight.
Thank you very much. Have a nice
All right,
evening.
You too.
Okay.
Councilor Lutke, would you do 25077, please?
Thank you. This is new business. It's a first reading. We're going to refer it to a second reading on February 27th, 2025. Item 2025-077, authorizing the grant of an easement for gas facilities on town-owned land at 725 Main Street in Hyannis.
Second.
Motion made and seconded. Madam Clerk?
Sorry about that. Councilors Penn.
Yes.
Schnapp.
Yes.
Starr. Tamish.
Yes.
Turkelson.
Yes.
Bloom.
Yes.
Burdick.
Yes.
Clark.
Yes.
Crow.
Yes.
Levesque.
Yes.
Ludke.
Yes.
11 yes.
How about Neary?
Thank you. Do we have a
Yes.
motion to adjourn?
Yes.
So moved.
Oh,
No, you didn't go.
Councilor Neary? Yes. Thank you.
okay.
Councilor Starr?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So I have a
Back
motion
to
to
12.
adjourn. Thank you.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Again, we have to have a roll call vote.
Councilors Schnapp,
Yes.
Starr,
Yes.
Tamish,
Yes.
Turkelson,
Yes.
Bloom,
Yes.
Burdick,
Yes.
Clark,
Yes.
Crow,
Yes.
Levesque,
Yes.
Ludke,
Yes.
Neary,
Yes.
Penn,
Yes.
12 yes.
Thank you. We are adjourned. Good night.